I don't plan on relying on someone who hasn't even gotten married past 30. Acting all high and mighty with that chump change, I couldn't help but be shocked by the first words directed at me from the woman who was supposed to become my sister-in-law. My brother, with an even more malicious grin, turned to me. "Sis, just go home already. Please don't forget to leave your gift, though." The two of them laughed at me together. I felt something close to hatred towards my brother, but the next words he said made me lose even that emotion. "Well, it doesn't really matter if we have your gift or not. All our relatives love me, and they're probably giving us a lot of money. Mom likes me more than you too, so she might even give me all of her property." "Hey, that makes it sound like you're just using them for money." "Well, it can't be helped. They're a good source of income." I never thought my brother could be such a terrible person. I was foolish for being considerate of these people. Despite it being our first reunion in a long time, my brother hasn't changed a bit since the old days. If anything, his terrible personality has only worsened, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I reached my limit and left the waiting room while the two of them laughed together. My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old. I work for a foreign cosmetics company. After graduating from college, I worked for another company, but I was lucky enough to be headhunted by my current company and changed jobs. The people I work with are ambitious, and I work tirelessly every day while receiving constant motivation. As a result, I now hold the position of department head. Ever since I started working at this company, they have recognized my worth. Every day has been enjoyable. Of course, there are times when I struggle with work, but the sense of accomplishment after overcoming those challenges is something I can't experience anywhere else. I've never been one to spend my days thinking about how much fun I'm having every day, especially before going to college. My days were very stifling. I have a younger brother, Nate, who is 5 years younger than me. Ever since Nate was born, my mom has been completely devoted to him. She loves him so much that I became less important to her. As a young child, I couldn't find anything to fill the loneliness of not being cared for by my mom. The more my dad and relatives tried to pay attention to me, the more I missed my mom. On the other hand, Nate was the first boy born in our family in a long time. He was also the type to easily get spoiled by anyone. So before long, our relatives stopped caring about me and only doted on my brother. To make matters worse, I have a strong sense of justice and hate wrongdoing. Not many people find a child who points out problems so cutely. Because of this, I became more and more distant from my relatives. The worst part was Nate's personality. Having been pampered by my mom and relatives, Nate grew into someone who couldn't be satisfied unless he was the center of attention, and knew exactly how to behave to get it. You could say he was skillful and good at getting by in life, but you could also say he was manipulative. I couldn't get along well with such a brother. Nate often got into fights, and my mom always defended him. I started to lose my sense of purpose. Not just my mom, but my relatives also started favoring Nate, and I began to feel uncomfortable whenever our family gathered. Seeing me like this, Nate would say, "Why don't you go to the other room, sis?" He had a smiling face, but he was giving me a look that didn't allow any objections. At that time, Nate was in the first grade of elementary school. If something bothered him, he wouldn't hesitate to lie and make me look like the bad guy. I had long lost my position as the older sister. When my brother said that, I had no choice but to leave. But what hurt more than being treated like an intruder by my brother was the way my mother and relatives acted. When my father noticed I was gone and asked, "Where's Emma?" the relatives just shook their heads, and my mother said, "I don't know." Then Nate jumped in. "Speaking of which, the other day," my mother and the relatives listened with great interest to his story, as if I never existed. It was so heartbreaking. Nothing changed, even when I wasn't around. At times like that, only my father's sister, Aunt Ava, worried about me. "Here you are. Don't you want to go back to the others? Or do you not want to? As I cried quietly, sad and frustrated, my aunt sat down next to me. Without me noticing, she gently stroked my back as I buried my face in her lap. When I couldn't say anything, my aunt began to speak softly. I kind of understand how you feel, Emma. Maybe it's because I'm an older sister too. Ever since my brother was born, he was the one who got all the attention. And you know how our relatives are, mostly women, right? So they really spoil the boys. I always thought it was unfair. You too, Aunt Ava? I was surprised. My aunt was always cheerful and in charge at family gatherings, and I never would have thought she felt that way. My aunt smiled gently in response to my question. Yes, when I was a kid, I was so jealous of my brother all the time. But he wasn't very talkative, so he wasn't always the center of attention like Nate. I think you must be feeling much worse than I did. Aunt Ava said this while gently stroking my head. I hadn't had my head patted like this in so long, and I felt a mix of emotions, happiness and embarrassment for letting her see how weak I felt. Our family has strong ties, you know. And Nate is kind of cunning, or maybe he's just good at winning people's hearts. He has that kind of personality, right? Everyone gets easily fooled by him. Really, Aunt Ava? You think that about Nate too? I was surprised again, thinking that no one in the family saw my brother that way. Aunt Ava winked at me, surprised. So don't forget, I'm watching you, Emma. If you want, I can talk to everyone about it. No, it's okay. Just knowing that you're watching me is enough to make me happy. All right, I understand. But if there's anything you want me to hear, I'll listen. You can always rely on me. After that, I looked forward to seeing my aunt at family gatherings. Even now that I've moved away, I still keep in touch with her regularly. The only other contact I have is the occasional email from my father with updates. Since I rarely go home, I don't know much about my family and relatives' current situation, so I never expected to get this kind of news from my father. Nate is getting married. Right now, I don't have a partner. One by one, my friends are getting married, and lately, even my coworkers are in a marriage rush. At a time when I was feeling a bit anxious, I got the unexpected news of my younger brother's wedding. Even though I'm not unhappy with my current life, I felt down. Then Nate contacted me, adding insult to injury. Hey sis, long time no see. I'm getting married, and my fiance is already pregnant. Don't worry about not being married and showing our parents your grandchild. I've got that covered. But in return, give us at least $10,000 as a gift. It includes the cost of giving birth. Kids are expensive, you know. My already low excitement to celebrate Nate's wedding dropped to 0. Because of his sense of entitlement, I even considered not attending the wedding. But I convinced myself that this was a once-in-a-lifetime family event and decided to accept Nate's request. On the wedding day, after the ceremony, we were led to a family waiting room to prepare for the reception. I reunited with my mom and relatives after a long time had passed without seeing them. Of course, the topic was all about Nate. I tried to accept it since he was the star of the day, but my past memories kept coming back. That day, the gloomy, cloudy sky seemed like it would rain any moment, and my mood got darker and darker. That's when my dad talked to me.
Emma, it's been a while. How's work?
Oh, Dad, I'm getting by somehow.
I see. So would you consider coming back home more often?
My dad said that, but I didn't feel like it. Yeah, I'll come back when work calms down. I need to go to the restroom now. I left the family waiting room. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I thought I had changed a bit, but I see others don't change so easily. As expected, I felt uncomfortable in front of my relatives. I let out a big sigh. At that moment, my phone vibrated.
Come to the bride and groom's waiting room right now.
It was a message from Nate. What does he want at a time like this? I headed to the bride and groom's waiting room, pondering.
Did you bring it?
As soon as I arrived, Nate asked me this question. I didn't understand at first. But I realized what he meant from his and his wife's nasty looks. Yeah, I brought the $10,000 gift. Are you satisfied now? Congratulations on your wedding. I reluctantly offered my congratulations, even though my heart wasn't in it. But I immediately regretted being considerate.
Only $10,000? I clearly said to give more than that. Isn't it common courtesy to give more than the requested amount? You're as clueless as ever, sis.
Wait a minute. Isn't $10,000 already a generous amount? I gave it because you said the baby was coming. Isn't your attitude a bit much? If you choose to act like this, I don't want to be involved with you in the future. As I snapped back, Nate exaggeratedly clicked his tongue. I was really annoyed that despite giving them the $10,000 they asked for, they still complained. As I glared at my brother, his wife standing next to him put her hand on her hip and laughed at me. Don't worry, we don't plan on relying on someone who's still unmarried in her 30s and acting so high and mighty for such a small amount of money. I couldn't help but be shocked by the first words directed at me by the woman who was supposed to be my sister-in-law. Nate also gave me a malicious grin.
Yeah, just take your gift and leave.
Make sure you leave the gift money. The two of them laughed at me together. I felt a strong hatred for my brother and his wife, but Nate's next words made me lose that feeling.
Well, even without your gift, we'll be fine. All our relatives love me. I'm sure they gave us a lot of money. Mom likes me more than you, too. She might even give me her entire fortune.
Wait, that makes it sound like you're just using them for money.
Well, it's true. That's why we invited fewer friends and more relatives.
I never thought my brother could be such a terrible person. I couldn't help but be shocked by Nate and his wife, who seemed to find it amusing that he viewed our relatives and even our mother like that. I was stupid for worrying about them. I was disgusted by my brother, who hadn't changed at all since we were kids and had only gotten worse. Unable to bear it any longer, I left the bride and groom's waiting room as they continued to laugh. Emma! As soon as I left the waiting room, I heard someone call my name. It was my Aunt Ava. Seeing my aunt, I couldn't help but let my feelings show. Auntie, I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving. When I said that, my aunt showed her anger. I heard what just happened. This is unforgivable. Everyone should know about it. But it's true that everyone likes Nate, right? If I say something, I'm sure no one will believe me. It's not like he's forcing our relatives to give them money, so it's just a matter of me putting up with it. It's fine. I don't think I'll ever see them again anyway. Apparently, my aunt had been worried about me looking uncomfortable in the relatives' waiting room and followed me when I left. After she had heard my conversation with Nate and his wife, my aunt suggested telling everyone. But after seeing the two of them laughing and looking down on our entire family and relatives, I had already given up. However, my aunt was filled with anger, contrary to how I felt. You don't have to put up with it anymore, Emma. I never thought Nate would go this far. There's still time. Let's confront them together and reveal everything. If anyone still supports Nate after that, then they can be their source of money or whatever else they want. Encouraged by my aunt's words, I decided to face the situation and returned to the family room with her. Surprisingly, my mother's brother, Uncle John, believed my story right away.
Actually, there have been some bad rumors about him at the company. I didn't want to doubt my nephew, and I thought it was natural for the business to have some bad times. But after hearing Emma's story, it all makes sense. I guess I was only considered valuable as long as I was paying him.
Uncle John runs a company, and Nate works there. It seems Nate has been taking advantage of his position as the president's nephew and doing whatever he pleases. Because Uncle John is the company's president, our relatives respect him. When he acknowledged my story, everyone started to believe me, one by one. There's no way Nate could be like that. My mother, who had been adamant until the end, gradually grew suspicious, not only because of me, but also because my aunt had talked about Nate. My mother, who had been asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars for wedding and childbirth expenses, seemed to have her doubts, and eventually accepted our story. My father, who seemed to have believed me from the beginning, was radiating with anger. At that moment, when all the relatives finally listened to me and my aunt, my father spoke up.
I'm sorry for our son. We must have raised him wrong. Let's all go home today. He doesn't deserve to be celebrated.
With those words from my father, my mother and all the relatives decided not to attend the wedding reception. My parents hurriedly left the family room to explain the situation to the other guests. As we waited at the shuttle bus stop, the people who were supposed to attend the wedding started to arrive. At the end of the crowd, I could see my parents. My father gave me a strong nod when he saw me. I'm sure all the guests had decided not to attend. Thank you for believing in me. I tried to convey that to my father, but as I approached him, he was yelling into his cell phone.
Who would celebrate someone like you, who repays kindness with malice?
The person on the phone must be Nate. It was the first time I had seen my father so openly angry.
I heard from Aunt Ava. Nate, it seems you've been calling our family and relatives a bunch of gold diggers. How could you say that after all they've done for you? We have no intention of celebrating you anymore. We're going home today.
My father hung up the phone and apologized to me for all the hard times I had gone through. As soon as we got on the bus, Nate called me.
Emma and Aunt Ava turned everyone against us and spread rumors. Now nobody's left at the venue.
I calmly responded to Nate, who was panicking and raising his voice. Your Aunt Ava heard you guys making fun of the family. She joined in the conversation, so everyone believed us. Can you stop saying I spread rumors? I just told the truth. It's the same thing. What are you going to do about it? And I don't know. We're already on the bus.
Don't say that. Are all of them on the bus too? If so, please convince them to come back with you.
At first, Nate was confident, but now his voice sounds like he's about to cry, realizing the situation is bad. But I didn't feel like forgiving him at all. You just want the gift money, don't you?
That's not my intention.
Either way, we're not coming back, so goodbye. I'll cut ties with you after this.
Wait, sis.
I heard my brother's desperate voice from the phone, but I hung up without caring. After that, cell phones started ringing, one after another on the bus. It must have been my brother and his wife calling, but no one answered the calls from someone who saw their family and relatives as cash cows. In the end, my brother and his wife couldn't get any gift money from the attendees, not just me, our parents and relatives. They seemed to have planned to pay for the wedding with the gift money and ended up in a lot of debt. Not only me, but our parents and relatives were contacted for help, but no one was willing to help Nate anymore. On top of that, they lost contact with the few friends they had invited. The punishment for my brother was far from over. Our uncle fired Nate. He probably couldn't bring himself to defend my brother, who had been performing poorly and had a bad reputation. His wife had already quit her job for marriage, and even though they were in debt, I'm pregnant. She didn't seem to want to work. In the end, they had no money, constant fights, and decided to divorce before the baby was born. After giving birth, his wife tried to make money working at night, but her bad personality held her back, and she could barely pay off the debt. My brother couldn't find another job and got stuck in a cycle of borrowing more money to pay off his debts. He seemed to have come back home for help several times, but both our father and mother rejected him. On the other hand, I've been going back to my parents' house more often since Nate's wedding. I've been attending family gatherings, and I don't feel uncomfortable anymore. As a result, I feel like I have more room in my heart and can see things from a much broader perspective. I've become more flexible in dealing with work accidents and requests, and my colleagues, subordinates, and bosses have praised the change in atmosphere. And just the other day, I was invited to dinner by a salesperson from a company we've been dealing with for a while. I feel a little excited about the long-awaited signs of spring.